This is one of my favourite stories from India. It's called The Royal Journey to Heaven, and this is how I will tell it to you. Long ago, there was a kingdom, and the kingdom had a king, but sadly for the kingdom was neither wise nor clever. But the good news is the king did have an advisor, a vizier, and he was very clever. But by the end of this story, you may question whether or not he was wise. One evening, around this time of year, the king and his vizier were walking through the palace gardens when the king heard a strange noise. The king said, "My goodness, what is that noise?" And his advisor said, "Your Majesty, as true as it is that I will always be with you, wherever you are, in heaven or in hell, that is the sound of your Majesty's foxes crying." And the king said, "My goodness, why are my foxes crying?" And the advisor said, "Your Majesty, as true as it is that I will always be with you wherever you are, in heaven or in hell, they are crying because they are cold. Your Majesty's servant, who is supposed to buy blankets for the foxes, took the money for the blankets and put it in his own pockets, and so the foxes cry." The king said, "Disgusting! Have my servant who is in charge of buying blankets for the foxes hanged. Then go to the treasury, take some gold, buy them some blankets. They're so cold. It's so sad." Now, ladies and gentlemen, do you think that anywhere in this kingdom there was a servant whose job it was to buy blankets for foxes? Well, no, of course not. So the next morning, the vizier, the advisor, simply picked on a servant and had him tried and hanged within half an hour for not buying blankets for the foxes. And the vizier went to the king's treasury and he took gold and he put it in his own pocket. The next evening, the king and the vizier were walking through the gardens once more, and again there was a sound. And the king said, "My goodness, my foxes, they're still cold. I told you to go and take gold from my treasury and buy blankets for them." And the vizier said, "Your Majesty, as true as it is that I will always be with you in heaven or in hell, I did buy blankets for your foxes. That is not the sound of them crying, that is the sound of them singing. Thank you to your Majesty." And the king, who really was not very clever and not very wise, simply said, "Oh, how lovely." Suddenly, an animal ran between them. Brrr. It was a wild boar, a wild pig. Now, the king led a very protected life. He'd never seen a wild boar or a wild pig before in the flesh, and he looked at the animal running off and said, "My goodness, what was that animal?" And his advisor said, "Your Majesty, that is one of your Majesty's elephants." And the king said, "My goodness, I thought elephants were big animals." And his advisor said, "Your Majesty, as true as it is that I will always be with you wherever you are, in heaven or in hell, elephants are normally very big. But your Majesty's keeper of the elephants, whose job is to feed the elephants, has taken the money that should have been spent on food for the elephants, and he has put it in his own pocket. And so the poor elephants have starved and become much, much smaller." The king said, "Disgusting! Have my keeper of the elephants hanged, and then go and take some gold from the treasury. Go and buy some food for my elephants. They're so small." So the next morning, the king's keeper of the elephants was tried and hanged within half an hour. And the advisor went to the king's treasury, took some gold, and put it in his own pocket. The next evening, the king and his advisor were walking through the palace gardens when again a wild boar ran between them. And the king watched it run off and said, "My goodness, I thought I told you to take some food for my poor elephants." And the king's advisor said, "Your Majesty, as true as it is that I will always be with you wherever you are, in heaven or in hell, that was not an elephant, that was a mouse." "A mouse?" said the king. "I thought mice were small animals." And the advisor said, "Your Majesty, as true as it is that I will always be with you wherever you are in heaven or in hell, mice are normally very small. But your Majesty's cook has been leaving food out and wasting food so that the mice come and eat all the food that's left around the kitchens, and they have grown to an enormous size." And the king said, "Disgusting! Have my cook hanged! I mean, these mice, they're as big as elephants!" And so, the next morning, the cook was taken to the jail and awaited execution, his trial only lasting 30 minutes. But as he waited in jail, he begged to see the king's advisor. And the vizier came to the jail and listened to the pleas of the cook, who said, "Please, please, I've not done anything wrong. Please save me. I'll do anything. I'll tell you where every penny I've ever saved all my life. I'll tell you where I've hidden it. Just help me escape." And the king's advisor said, "Tell me where you keep the money that you have saved all your life." And so the cook told the vizier. And the vizier went to the cook's poor rooms and found a straw mattress on the ground and looked under the straw mattress, and there was a bag of a few coins, everything the cook had saved during his life. And the vizier took the bag and put the money in his own pocket. It was time for the execution, midday. The king sat on his throne, and next to him on a smaller chair sat the vizier. The cook was brought out, and he stood in front of the king and shook, and then he was led up the steps of the scaffold. He stood underneath the hangman's rope. The rope was put around his neck. He looked pleadingly at the vizier, and the hangman was just about to pull the lever that would hang the cook when the vizier said, "Your Majesty, stop! We must not hang the cook." And the king said, "Why ever not? He left food out for the mice. It's disgusting." And the vizier said, "Your Majesty, as true as it is that I'll always be with you wherever you are in heaven or in hell, last night I had a dream, and in my dream the gods told me that if a man dies at midday today, he will go straight to heaven. This cook is an evil man. He left food out for the mice. He must not go to heaven." And the king thought about that and thought and said, "Oh yes. Oh no, that would be terrible. He mustn't go to heaven. No. Bring the cook down. Don't hang him. Don't hang him." Wait a minute. I have always wanted to go to heaven, said the king, who was neither wise nor clever. "Hang me!" And the king jumped up from his throne, ran down and then up the scaffold, put the noose around his own neck, and was almost about to hang himself with his own jewelled hand upon the lever when he realised what he was doing and stopped. He removed the noose from his neck, and he looked at his advisor and said, "My loyal advisor, my loyal vizier, you have always said that you would be with me wherever I am, in heaven or in hell. You can go first." And so they hanged the vizier. And then the king hanged himself. And I don't know whether they are in heaven or in hell, but I hope they enjoy each other's company, because wherever they are going to be together for a very long time. And that is the story of the royal journey to heaven, and that is how I have told it to you.